The used car market has flipped, whatever that means. Over the course of 2022, used car prices have been declining at what seems to be a faster and faster rate, which is great news for anybody that's looking to buy a used car. But today, let's take a look at the most up-to-date data to give us a glimpse on where the market stands as of today, December 2022. So let's kick it off by looking at the Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index. The Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index declined to 199.4 in the month of November, which is down 14.2% from a year ago. And this is actually the first time since August of 2021 that the Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index has dropped below 200, which is huge. Wholesale used vehicle prices saw a decrease of 0.3% from October to November, and if we look at the MMR or Manheim Market Report data, we actually saw a decline of 2.2% in the 3-year-old index, which is a larger than normal decline. And for those of you who aren't familiar what MMR or Manheim Market Report data is and why it's important, basically what this is the cumulative data of all of the cars that were sold at wholesale and how much they were sold for. This gives us a really good idea on not only where the market is, but where prices are trending and heading on a consumer level. Because of the fact that wholesale prices are at the beginning of the price pipeline, and they oftentimes dictate what consumers pay later on down the road. In theory, as wholesale prices decrease, so do consumer prices. And so we have been seeing consistent price declines at the wholesale level, which is great news because those price declines should be trickling down to the consumer level sooner than later. If we look at MMR retention, which is an index that gives us data and insight on how much cars are selling for based off of their MMR value, MMR retention was at 98.4%, which in turn means that cars are selling for less than what they're theoretically worth at wholesale, which is an indication that consumers are successfully able to negotiate down their used vehicle prices, and the data supports this. Because if we look at the daily sales conversion rate for November, it was at 49.8%, and the daily sales conversion rate is a metric that shows bargaining power. Essentially, the lower the percentage, the more bargaining power a consumer had. And if we look at the bargaining power in November of 2022, not only was it stronger for the consumer compared to November of 2021, but it was also stronger compared to historical Novembers as well. Now let's narrow down this data and let's take a look at individual vehicle segments. You can see here that all 8 major vehicle segments saw price declines year over year. And if we head over to Car Guru's Car Value Index, you can see even more of this same data. Just by looking at this graph, which of course doesn't give us a detailed view, but it does give us an overview glimpse of how the market's been trending over the last year, you can see that for the vast majority of the last year, prices were pretty stable and stagnant. They didn't go up a ton or go down a ton. But in September of 2022, so just a few months ago, there was a drastic shift in the market. And you can see that in mid-September, things started to change and prices started to decline rapidly, which is what we're currently seeing today. If we scroll down, you can see an even more detailed view based off of body style. And you can see that most vehicle body styles are seeing declines in not only 30-day segments, but 90-day segments, and even some are seeing declines in the year-to-date segment as well. With the exception of convertible, which has actually seen an appreciation in all 3 of these categories. If you scroll down to makes, you can see a wide variety of different manufacturers, and you can see that the same picture is being painted here as well. Most vehicles are seeing declines in the last 30 and 90 days, and many vehicles are even seeing declines in the last year as well. We're seeing our biggest decline with Tesla, which has declined over 5% in the last 30 days. And as far as 30-day data, most cars are depreciating anywhere between 1 and 3% in the last 30 days, which is pretty normal in this market. And there are only a few cars that have actually appreciated in the last 30 days, and those cars include Rolls-Royce, Pontiac, McLaren, and Lamborghini. Which is bad news if you're somebody who's wanting to buy one of those high-end exotic cars, but for the rest of us, it doesn't really matter. Now, I know that some people have some mixed feelings whenever it comes to car gurus and the validity behind car gurus and using them as a data source. And I will say that whenever you're doing research for a car, you shouldn't look at one single data source and put 100% of your eggs in that basket. Because the reality is no single data source is going to be 100% accurate. They're all skewed in their own ways. Instead, what I have found to be the best path is to look at a variety of different data sources and then make your own conclusion based off of the variety of data that you look at. So do I think that you should buy a car purely based off of the prices and the data that car gurus offer? Absolutely not. But is CarGurus a good tool to use in order to determine a fair price for a car? Absolutely. I've been looking at the used car market with a fine-tooth comb for a few years now, and I found CarGurus to be extremely helpful. And as far as user interface goes, I think that it's one of the best. It really does give you a lot of details, and as long as you look at these details paired with other data, then you'll be setting yourself up for success. Now, aside from CarGurus, one thing I always like to look at is applicable data, because the reality is you can look at Manheim data and CarGurus data all you want, but if that data isn't reflected in real-world prices, then it doesn't really matter. So I also like to look at AutoTrader and Cars.com to see what cars are actually being listed and sold for. So here we are on Cars.com, and I set a filter of a minimum year of 2020, so we're only going to look at cars that are 2020 or newer. This is in order to sort of replicate what we see with MMR 3-year-old index. You can also see that I've set a filter of $50,000. And if we start to scroll through the listings, you'll almost immediately notice that we see some price drops. For example, this 2020 Lincoln Nautilus, which has a price drop of $400. If we continue scrolling, you can see that this Audi has a $4,000 price drop. This 2022 Jeep Gladiator has a $1,500 price drop. This 2022 Kia Carnival has a $458 price drop. A Jeep Cherokee with a $918 price drop. We have a Lexus with a $2,000 price drop. A BMW with an $800 price drop. We have a 2021 Mercedes-Benz with a $1,986 price drop and a 2020 Alfa Romeo with a $2,000 price drop. If we go over to the second page, you can see more of the exact same. You can see that cars have pretty significant price drops, a $2,300 price drop, an $800 price drop. The point is, you can see an increase in price drops on these third-party platforms, and price drops are indicative of a decrease in demand, which is great news for car prices as a whole. Now, the reality is the data doesn't lie, and car prices are in fact going down. And they've been going down more and more significantly over the last couple of months. But one comment and question that I get all the time in my videos is basically the commentary of you guys saying that you're walking into dealerships and you're noticing that the sticker prices on cars are not going down. So how is it that the car market is crashing and yet dealerships are still asking for sky-high prices? And unfortunately, this is relatively true. Sticker prices at dealerships aren't declining significantly, and ultimately this comes down to the fact that dealerships are trying to hold on to as much profit margin as possible. Dealerships bought cars at an inflated price at the end of summer, early fall, and these same dealerships aren't eager to sell these cars at losses. They're basically going to keep their sticker price as high as possible until they're forced to do otherwise, and in the meantime, they're going to hope that some uneducated buyer comes in and pays sticker for a car, which unfortunately does happen. But it is important to note that just because sticker price on these cars isn't declining doesn't mean purchase price isn't. And this kind of goes back to the bargaining power point that I mentioned earlier in this video. The reality is consumers have more bargaining power than they've had in a really long time at dealerships. And even though sticker prices may be high, it doesn't mean that that is the actual price that consumers are paying for cars. And there is a high likelihood that many consumers are negotiating a few grand off of these sticker prices. And this really emphasizes the importance of being an educated buyer, knowing exactly what you want to buy and how much you want to pay, and being willing to aggressively negotiate on that car purchase. In fact, I had a personal experience with this last month when I helped my aunt buy a car, and I was able to negotiate about $2,000 off of her used car purchase, which came out to about 8% off of the purchase price. And so ultimately, prices at dealerships won't fall a ton until dealerships are forced to lower their prices. So in the meantime, make sure that you're an educated buyer and go into a dealership being willing, able, and prepared to negotiate, because that's ultimately where you're going to save the most money. But like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.